Tonight, on the wonderful world of Disney, we bring you part 2 of 3 Without Fear.
For 13-year-old Dave Rodgers, the adventure began as a trip to his uncle's ranch in the vast wilderness of southern Baja California in Mexico. The last 60 miles were to be made in a small bush plane, and they'd nearly arrived at the ranch when the engine failed. An emergency landing on the beach left the pilot unconscious. Dave, thinking the ranch was not far off, set out on his own to bring help. He'd gone about 5 miles when darkness caught up with him. Next morning, Dave was awakened by the sting of a scorpion. By the time he had made his way back to the beach, the plane was gone, and he was nearly unconscious. He had no way of knowing the pilot had gone to organize an aerial search party. He awoke to find that he had been hidden from the search planes all that afternoon by 2 Mexican children, Pedro and Maria, who had believed the planes were looking for them. Pedro and Maria, who didn't speak a word of English, were trying to escape from their guardian, Manuel, who made a frightening appearance the next morning in the midst of a gathering storm. When his new friends ran, Dave went with them. They finally eluded Manuel by hiding in a cave, where they waited out the storm and got acquainted with the help of a Spanish-English dictionary. Pedro and Maria, he learned, were orphans, and heading north to their grandmother's house in a town called San Quintin. They were carrying a bag of valuable pearls their father had given them, which was the real reason Manuel was chasing them. When the storm was over, they started out again, and were almost immediately overtaken by Manuel. By leaving their clothes on the beach near a riptide, they managed to convince him they were dead, and they were free at last. But Manuel was later to tell Dave's father the story and cause him to call off the search for his son. The children continued along the beach, living mostly on clams and fish, until several days later they found a beach boat that provided them with clothes and a map, which showed they were still over 300 miles from San Quintin. It was a long way to go, but their spirits were high, and they resumed their walk up the deserted coast. For a few days, the journey was uneventful. And then one afternoon, Pedro crested a ridge and discovered a whole beach full of natives of the area. Thousands of sea lions and sea elephants.
Pedro, Maria, look at that one.
There was no danger here, of course. In fact, the sea lions were willing to leave their beach exclusively for the use of the travelers. And Chico decided to help them along a little. Naturally, there were a few that couldn't be bothered, especially a big bull sea elephant who looked as though nothing in the world could ever bother him. all 2 tons of it. He had never seen anything like Chico before, though, and try as he might, there was just no way to ignore him, much less outrun him.
Vente, Chico, vente. Déjalo, Chico.
And so the miles passed in a kind of endless vacation. And every day and every new beach seemed to provide some new kind of fun.
Tráela, Chico, tráela. Get it, Chico, get it. It went in the hole. Get it, Chico. Maria, here. Throw it again, throw it again. Maria! What happened? ¿Qué pasó, Maria? ¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué pasó?
No, Chico, quítate.
Let's move her up where it's dry.
There was no way to tell how badly the ankle was hurt. It didn't look like more than just a little scrape, but judging by Maria's pain, there was much more to it than that. They had to keep moving, though, at least until they found a good place to set up camp. So while Dave did what he could by way of first aid, Pedro went to look for something that would serve as a crutch.
See if you can walk.
It wasn't long before the ankle began to swell, and traveling became a nightmare. To make it worse, this particular part of the coast was an almost endless stretch of rocky beach. It took them most of the day just to cover half a mile. Pedro had desperately wanted to stay away from civilization, for fear the news of their survival might somehow get back to Manuel. But now all that was unimportant. He had to find help for Maria. And a little later, when he found a narrow path leading inland, he decided to follow it. Away from the cool sea breeze, the heat grew almost intolerable. Progress was slow. Their water supply was dwindling fast. And the trail had faded away and then disappeared completely. More and more, it looked as if they'd made the wrong decision. But turning back now would mean they'd put Maria through all this agony for nothing.
Un rancho. Dave, Maria, un rancho, vengan. Chico! No! Chico! Déjala! No! Chico! Vente! Buenos días, señor. Soy Pedro, su servidor. Por favor, ¿me puede dar una taza de agua? Mi hermana viene herida. Gracias.
When it came time to look at Maria's ankle, the old man produced a bowl of some mysterious potion, a sort of home-brewed cure-all. It apparently worked just as well from the inside out as it did from the outside in.
Ow! Ooh, yuck. Maybe taken internally and externally.
We work for food and water. Out for Maria's ankle. Soon ankle is better. We go.
Oh, Grunts.
They never did learn the old man's name. He was just Grunts, who had somehow lost or misplaced the power of speech. And until Maria's ankle was well, they were his servants and his prisoners. They learned quickly they had to work hard and keep at it to make him happy, although Pedro did have one little project on the side. Each evening, he made it a point to spend some time with the burro, just in case they needed him for transportation. Maria's ankle came along nicely in the days that followed. But there was no point in letting old Grunts know that. Before long now, they'd be leaving, and the less he knew about their plans, the better. He was getting much too used to having them around to do all the work for him. In the meantime, they just worked and waited, and had a little fun whenever they had the chance. It took Grunt some time to get over the shock. But that evening, he said thank you in the only way he knew how, with extra rations for the children and some ancient homemade sugar candy for Chico.
Isn't such a bad guy at all. We leave tonight?
So it was time to end their stay with old Grunts. And that night, while Dave and Maria waited at a distance, Pedro took advantage of his friendship with the burro.
Hey, that boy, Pedro. Way to go.
They drowsed through the night, waking up just often enough to keep the burro going in a straight line. By dawn, they figured they were a safe distance from old Grunt's place. They hoped the burro had the sense to find his own way back, but they needn't have worried about that. They were on their own again at last, heading north toward San Quintin. But even though Maria was walking well now, they had a couple of big handicaps. For one, the map said it would be many days of hard going to reach the sea, where traveling would be easier. And for another, they were very short of water.
Should have filled this thing up before we left. But I was afraid we'd wake him.
We find water soon.
Hope you're right. This sure is dry country.
gallo.
What do you think?
I don't know. No, Manuel might hear about us.
Yeah, you're right. But I sure do wish I can get in touch with my folks and let them know I'm all right.
Then we go to village.
No! It's too risky for you two.
But we are very thirsty. We go to village.
No! We'd better keep away from there. We'll find water someplace else.
Buenos días. ¿Qué andan haciendo?
Looks like we go to the village anyway.
Miren lo que me llena el desierto. Buenos días.
Buenos días.
¿Qué, refresco? ¿Refresco grande?
Sí. Gracias.
Nada.
Gracias.
No hay de nada.
Gracias.
¿Dónde viven?
En todos los altos.
¿Ah, sí? Está lejos.
Sí.
¿A dónde van?
A San Quintín.
¿De Todos Santos a San Quintín? No.
Sí, de veras.
¿De aquí hasta aquí? No.
Sí.
Tienen que cruzar este desierto. El desierto de Sierra Vizcaíno es muy malo. Muy malo.
Does anyone here speak English? English?
He's talking about the desert.
Good, you speak English.
You must cross the desert before you get San Quintin. It's very hot, very bad. Nobody crosses the desert.
Is there a telephone here?
Telephone. No telephone here.
Gotta get in touch with my dad in Los Angeles.
You must go to the Arco. Many cars pass there.
El Orco? Where is that?
Over those montas, very far. But you wait for Gonzalez. And his truck, he will take you.
Really? When is he coming?
He brings on supplies in 3, maybe 4 weeks.
A month? We'll be in San Quintin before that.
That'd be foolish. You wait here. Be comfortable. Wait here.
We've already come more than halfway. We'll make it all right. It's just that...
You worry about your mother and father?
Yeah. I wish I could let them know I'm all right.
You could write them a letter.
Hey, good idea.
Señor, ¿me presta su lápiz y papel, por favor?
Sí.
Gracias.
Could you please have Gonzalez mail this to my parents?
Sí.
Gracias.
1 hour in the desert and you will be back.
Gracias. Adiós.
If the men in the cantina had thought the children were being overconfident, it was with good reason. This was the Vizcaino Desert. Not very large as deserts go, but one of the cruelest on the American continent. The sun was hotter, and the going rougher, and the terrain more bleak and arid than anything they could have imagined even yesterday. There was no shade, and never a moment's escape from the fierce heat. For 2 interminable days, they kept going, gauging their direction from the position of the sun and trying not to think of anything except their goal, a cool, almost unreal place somewhere ahead where sand dunes must eventually give way to sandy beach. On the 3rd night out from the little village, they made camp with a sense of hopelessness. Their food and water were completely gone. They had no idea how they could possibly survive another day. They'd needed the water desperately, and at the moment it seemed an incredible stroke of luck. But it was only the beginning. This stretch of sand they'd come upon was a place called Malarimo Beach, the junkyard of the Pacific. Stretched out like a gigantic catcher's mitt into the southward bound Pacific current, Malarimo Beach lies in wait to intercept every kind of floating debris from as far as half a world away. Of course, all this was lost on the children, who knew only they'd stumbled onto a beach full of marvelous junk, apparently put here for their exclusive use. After all the days and weeks of privation, this was just too good a place to hurry away from. After all, everything they could ask for was here. Materials for a house, all the comforts of home, and a surprisingly varied menu.
Sukiyaki, fried grasshoppers.
Delicious. See, delicious.
Sweet and sour squid. Turkey loaf. Beef.
Gracias.
Bird nest soup. Peaches. Peaches.
I don't like peaches. This isn't very good caviar.
On the desert, hunger and thirst had been their problem. But now that they were in the midst of plenty, they had another problem. They were getting picky. Remo stretches nearly 50 miles in all, and for most of its length, it's a beachcomber's paradise. Dave and Pedro spent a lot of time exploring, and a few days later, they came across what might be an easier and quicker way to continue their trip.
Looks pretty good.
Que suave.
You know, all we gotta do is patch up a few of these holes.
See, we don't have to walk now.
Before long, with a few patches and a bamboo mast, the boat was ready to launch, they hoped.
I guess she's just about ready.
She's ready.
It seemed a good idea to give it a test first, though. And according to the map, the calm waters of a nearby bay looked like the ideal spot. If all went well, they'd go out into the open ocean and follow the coast north as far as they could. Though they were off on their shakedown cruise in the bay, the little boat seemed seaworthy enough, except for one minor problem.
Hey, we're taking on water.
The leak wasn't serious, and they weren't about to sink, but there were other dangers ahead.
A whale! Look at that!
Ballena!
Scammons Lagoon, named for the old whaling captain who discovered it, is the breeding grounds for the great gray whale, which migrates here every winter from its home in the Arctic Ocean.
Otro!
Once hunted to the edge of extinction, the gray has made a strong comeback in the past 50 years. And every season, thousands of animals are here in Scammons Lagoon to mate and bear their calves.
There she goes again! Look over there!
¡Hijo! ¡Qué suave! ¡Ay, ay, ay! ¡Cuidado!
¡Híjole! We better get out of here!
¡Sí, pronto!
Well, the quiet waters of this particular bay weren't quite as safe as they seemed. But a few minutes of hard rowing brought them back to shallow water near the shore and another kind of sea creature that was much more their own size.
Hey, a turtle! Look at that!
Tortuga! I get for dinner.
Hey, Pedro! We don't need any food. Green turtle. Very good. Bad. Bad. It come out first. Good meat. Pedro? We've got all the food we need.
Pedro, please don't kill.
But she's big, like my father caught. We don't have to kill to eat.
Es verdad.
You're right.
Finally, just as it had to, the day came when it was time to leave the comfort and plenty of Malarimo Beach and head north again. They'd been worried that launching the little boat through the surf would be a problem, but they deliberately waited for a calm day, and it turned out to be a lot easier than they thought. With a gentle push from the makeshift sail and the help of a steering oar, they began to make some progress up the coast. Of course, they could only sail where the wind would blow them, but since it didn't always blow where they wanted to go, and sometimes didn't blow at all, they often had to man the oars to stay on course. As long as they could see the shore, that was no problem. But late that afternoon, the fog rolled in, and the shoreline disappeared. Without a compass, they were lost. Next morning, when the fog lifted, there was still no land to be seen. At least with the sun visible, they knew more or less where north was and which way to go. But the day passed, and then the night, and real fear began to haunt their every moment. Finally, on the third day,
Land! Maria! Pedro! Land!
they didn't have the faintest idea what beach this was or how far they'd come. But they could figure all that out later. Right now, all they wanted to do was get their land legs back and have a good warm lunch. It was a meal they would never get to finish. Of course, any bull is a dangerous animal, but this was a range bull that had lived in the wild all his life, and he saw this little beach as part of his territory. Intruders weren't welcome here. So the long journey was over. And that evening in San Quintin, there was a double family reunion, celebrated Mexican style. The little fiesta was a time of happiness, partly because they were all home safe, and also because Pedro had delivered the precious pearls to his grandmother, which would go a long way toward an education for he and Maria. But afterward, there was a time of sadness, too.
Time to say goodbye, Dave.
Hasta la vista, Dave. Bye, Maria. Adios. Chico Cher Chico.
And so it was goodbye, but not forever. And until they met again, there would be many memories to share. Memories of hardships and danger, of good times and laughter, and most important of all, of the friendship that would last for their lifetimes.
A voice from beyond causes trouble for Tom and Annie's elderly neighbor next in the Edison twins. That silly old bear thinks he's caused a leak in the sky. Don't miss the new adventures of Winnie the Pooh, a part of Tunes for Tuesday this afternoon at 4 o'clock on the Disney Channel.